Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Savannah.
What are we talking about today?
Waffles and Mochi. So, of course, to kick off this video, we always like to thank our patrons over on Patreon and our anonymous sponsor. I've gotten many questions about our anonymous sponsor. So, anonymous sponsor, thanks for bringing us such mystery and intrigue. You really are helping us out.
And today we do just want to give a brief content warning. We won't be talking a lot about these things, but I think they will probably come up. We will be mentioning eating disorders and issues with body image. So if those things bother you, please feel free to join us on our next episode or listen to one of our old episodes. Like we mentioned today, we are talking about Waffles and Mochi. So Waffles and Mochi is a children's show on Netflix that talks about food, different cultures associated with the foods, and also mentions different moral values, like things like patience and moderation, asking for help, stuff like that. This show first came out on March 16th, 2021, and it is a Higher Grounds production TV show, which if you don't know, Higher Grounds Productions is the production company of the Obamas. Originally, the show was titled Listen to Your Vegetables and Eat Your Parents.
Yeah, I just want to pause there because when I was watching the TV show, the theme song at the end has a little mini chant that says, listen to your vegetables and eat your parents. And every single time I thought I was hearing it wrong. I was like, there's no way it says that. And I listened for, 10 episodes. and finally I got my confirmation when I looked at the Wikipedia page and saw that it was that. Why did the Obamas think that was a good idea?
I thought it was kind of fun. Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't notice it because they also say it in every episode outside of the theme song.
But for adults, I think that's kind of fun. But for kids, I feel like they would also be very confused.
I think they'd think it's funny. Kids have a morbid sense of humor. Sometimes. Anyways, so this show is a combination of live actors as well as puppets and animation. Think something along the lines of Sesame Street. It is the only TV show that has been produced by Higher Grounds Productions. And on Rotten Tomatoes, Waffles and Mochi has a perfect approval rating of 100%, which is pretty impressive. The show does star Michelle Obama. She is in every episode. And then also kind of like Sesame Street or Yo Gabba Gabba, this show has lots of celebrity cameos with people like Zach Galifianakis, chefs like Massimo Bottura. Tan France was in an episode, Common, and Gaten Matarazzo.
I guess cooking TV shows is something that I really am out of the loop on. I know Savannah kind of has a bit of a leg up on me when it comes to cooking and Travel Channel stuff of that in nature.
I do. I would definitely consider myself to be a foodie for sure. I've loved watching cooking and travel shows probably my whole life, I would say. They were, I feel very influential to me growing up. I would watch Emerald in the 90s when I was a little kid. I watched a lot of Anthony Bourdain when I was starting in middle school, and that was also super, super influential to me, and they hold a special place in my heart. But what about you, Ryan? What are your feelings?
I watched a lot of the top 10 spooky food restaurants around the U.S. and those types of things.
Yeah. A
lot of top 10 hamburgers, that kind of nature. Nothing super food, educational based. I watched it if it's on. It's not aversive to me at all. It's just not something that I go out of my way to watch or something that is comforting for me to watch.
What about in your day-to-day life? How do you feel you approach food?
I love food. I have met people that don't like to eat. And I do feel the show did not talk about those types of people, but that's okay. But no, I love eating, big eater. As soon as I was fully vaccinated, those 2 weeks had passed, I was out to eat 6 times within the week, and not even really to go to anything special, just to Red Robin. That's all I wanted.
Food is very important to me. I would say most vacations I go to now are purely centered around food, if not going to like different art institutions, but it's usually food. Like I definitely have watched like several shows like Chef's Table and all those other ones, and then just planned vacations so I could go to those places and restaurants that I saw on the TV shows. And I feel like I kind of have been into like the whole Instagram food world of like trying to kind of almost show off with the fancy places that I get to eat at sometimes, obviously prior really to COVID, but yeah, I love food.
No, I could eat always, usually, pretty much. So another large aspect about this show is the puppets, and I feel like there are really a ton of children's shows recently that involve puppets. So I was happy to see puppets back and aboard. I feel like I have mixed relationships with puppets personally, because I feel like when I was watching it as a youth, I never really felt like I could like puppets because they just felt so kiddie. So I feel like I stopped myself from fully embracing puppets. Even though I liked Elmo, I liked Sesame Street, I danced to those types of videos and things. I liked Barney, which is kind of like a puppet. But I feel like once I really passed the pre-K age, they never really stayed in my life.
Yeah, I feel kind of similarly. I think when I was younger, I didn't love puppets. I think I kind of was a little bit afraid of them, to be honest. And I just don't think I watched a lot. Like, I never watched The Muppets, which I think would have really, like, fueled a desire of liking puppets.
We're not in a big Muppet household. No one really liked the Muppets or watched the Muppets.
Watch, one of our parents is going to, like, come for us now.
Yeah,
like,
and they're going to be
love the Muppets.
We watched it all the time. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. I will say, though, that puppets have grown on me as I've gotten older, just because I like kind of like the campy nature of them. I also think it's kind of funny just like watching the show with my dog. My dog is really into anything with puppets on the TV. I also watched Labyrinth recently, and like when she saw all the little like puppet goblins, she like lost her mind. Like she was so focused on the TV. So if you have a puppy, they might like this show. I will also mention one of my crowning achievements, my senior year of high school, we had to do a like sock puppet challenge, and my teacher loved my puppet so much that he told me I could be the reincarnation of Jim Henson.
Wow.
At the time, I didn't know who Jim Henson was, but once I learned, I was like, wow, that's a great compliment. Thank you for liking my puppet.
Don't know where to go from there. I've also come to appreciate puppetry in my later years. It's a whole other art form. I think it's so fun to like see people in the puppet world and how they're just in everything with puppets, because the puppet world is so small. Just kind of like there's always, in the voice actor world, there's always so many people all over the place that you never would think that are in this and are in this. It's kind of how it is with puppets. And I really like real effects in my now that I know the difference between CGI and real effects. 100% pretty much always choose to have real effects over CGI most of the time.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat there too.
I really liked the way the puppets looked in this.
Yeah, I thought that they were really cute. They weren't creepy. I didn't get any like creepy, like uncanny valley vibes with them. Like I feel like I do with other puppets. I like them.
Yeah, there weren't a ton of puppets. I mean, as far as I know, there was like there was a bee who was with Mrs. Obama.
Yes.
And there was Waffles and Mochi. Mochi was, I had really mixed feelings on Mochi at first, just because I felt like Mochi really played into that like meep kind of aesthetic. And I don't really want to encourage that in the youth. But I came to appreciate Mochi over time.
I'm not sure I know what you mean by not wanting to encourage meep culture. But we can move on. I liked Mochi. I thought that Mochi was cute. But also, if you recall from our Mandalorian episode, Ryan also didn't really love Baby Yoda. So I don't know what else to expect from her. I did like the show. Like overall, like general thoughts, I thought it was fun. I felt like there was like some pretty funny moments as an adult watching it. Some of my like favorite standout moments, I think, were like Tan France and the potato. Like when he was like really hyping up this potato, I was like, I feel like that potato. I identify with this moment.
I mean, I think the whole show was kind of just a delight standout. I watched the first episode with an actual child, so I got to kind of test the room on that area, and he was really, really into it in the beginning when they're showing where Waffles and Mochi come from. They're like, in the land of ice cream river and like frozen sweet mountains. I don't remember all the phrases that they used, but it was a lot of sweet treats. And he was like, whoa, really? Look at that. And I was like, this is prime children's entertainment right here. I had no idea. And then it got to the puppets and it got to the real people. And he was like, can we watch Shark Boy and Lava Girl? So he was not very impressed past the opening. In fairness, he was 4, but I also feel like 4-year-olds are maybe the demographic, no?
I'm not sure. I feel like it could range older. I think it probably really depends on the kid and like their household and things like that. I could see it being 4, but I could also see it maybe being like 8, somewhere around there. What do you think you would have thought about it if you were a kid, Ryan? Like, do you think you would have liked it?
That is the first thing that I think about. I think I would have liked it just fine. I mean, it's just very enjoyable to watch, and I think it's fun to see all the different food, and the travel aspect of it is really fun. I didn't really feel like I was ever being talked down to. There were some facts that I learned that I didn't even know as an adult. So, I mean, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would have really loved it if I was a kid. I was really into like PBS shows when I was a kid, and I feel like this could have like fit within those, albeit like much higher quality. Like it kind of reminded me of something like Zaboomafoo when I was a kid that had kind of like the puppet animals, and they would go to different parts of the world to talk about the animals. So yeah, I definitely think I really would have loved it, and especially the travel portion of it as well, because I really love to learn about different cultures when I was young.
I have no idea what it's like for kids to currently watch it. I mean, I read one New York Times article about this in the Wikipedia page, and none of it was from the perspective of kids or mention any kid's perspective on it. And like I mentioned, that one time I played it for a child, he immediately requested to change it. And I hang around kids a lot, and I always put on morning cartoons for them, and I always let them pick what they want, and no one's ever chosen Waffles and Mochi, so...
When I used to work with kids and would show like TV shows for them occasionally, it was never really the educational content that they wanted to watch. Like I specifically remember, I think, getting like booed once for putting on Bill Nye the Science Guy, or even Magic School Bus, I feel like was like immediately shot down by most children that I put it on for. Which kind of like brings me to a question of which is maybe like a better mode of like information for kids, like an outright educational show, or something that is maybe more like subtle or unexpected in the little like drops of wisdom it tries to put in.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a show that fits that mold. I mean, I think all of them do. There's always usually like a wrap-up end of like the Full House lesson where everything's back to normal and everyone hugs, and I think that's kind of the formula for most TV shows like Ricky, Dickie, and Dawn, or what have you. I don't like those shows very much. I'm not really a fan.
Like a fan of the shows that have like the outright message in them, or the non-outright message?
The non-outright message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's just like two different things, kind of. It's like comparing, I don't know, Bill Nye the Science Guy with SpongeBob. Like they're two different goals of what they're trying to do, one being more entertainment or one being more educational. I do like when something that is more entertainment, like is unexpectedly educational, like Teen Titans Go, when it's teaching you about equity. Mm-hmm. That's I think a really fun moment to learn about something real world that is important in a show that is seemingly just for entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Teen Titans Go. It's good. No one at me.
It is good.
One thing I just want to bring up really quick. I just want to know what children would make of the scenario of Waffles' backstory. They have a family tree episode, and we learned, it got me really hard. I don't know why. It's so funny to me that Waffles' mom is a Yeti, and on the dad's side is Waffles. And so I'm really having a hard time with that.
I mean, I like that. I thought that was nice. My assumption was like they were trying to talk about like being mixed race or something. Like that. I mean, I'm assuming that's why they did it. Mm-hmm. I didn't think too much of it because it was a kid's show. Although it is kind of funny because there are some moments where like clearly it's self-aware and is like not trying to show things that aren't real. Like they have an episode where they build a time machine and they go in the time machine and they think they just traveled like 5 days into the future, but really they were just sitting in a box for 5 days. So I don't know. It is kind of strange how they're like, you can be half Yeti and waffle, but you can't have a time machine.
Yeah, no. I mean, they do go to space in one episode, and they actually do go to space as well.
That's true.
So, I don't know.
And they have a flying shopping cart.
I just want to know, like, is it a waffle person, or is it just a waffle?
The other thing is, like, mochi is food, and he's seeing all these people eat food. He saw people eating mochi.
Yeah.
And he did not seem concerned.
Yeah. So I was really interested in how they showcased food on the show. And I think they gave a pretty wide variety. I think they shot, I feel like it was 3 primary locations. It was Peru. I feel like they went to Peru twice. They went to Japan twice. And did they actually go to Italy? No, I'm not remembering.
They did. They went to Venice. They went to Savannah, Georgia, and Los Angeles. I think those were all the locations.
Venice, Los Angeles, and Savannah. Wait,
yeah.
They didn't go to Japan?
No, they did go to Japan.
Okay.
And Peru.
Okay, so yeah. I really like those kind of 3 parts of the world. They pick Asia, and then South America, and then kind of traditional Europe. And I very much liked the location.
Yeah, and it didn't feel too overwhelming. Say each episode had multiple countries that they went to or something, which, I mean, they did go to Peru and Japan maybe in one episode, but the season just focused on those areas.
I want to ask, do you feel like the food that they presented was too ambitious for the children that they are targeting?
I don't think so.
Even the pickle episode?
Even the pickle episode. I don't think so. I mean, I'm thinking, one, the demographic of kids who are watching this, my guess would maybe have more access to trying different types of foods. I used to work at a wealthy private school, and there was 5-year-olds who would eat sushi and stuff. They would eat foods that you would maybe think would be unconventional for younger kids. So if they're more wealthy, then they're probably eating fancier or different types of foods. And I am of the mindset, and I'm sure that one day if I'm a parent, I probably won't actually be like this. But in my mind of imagining what I would be like as a parent, I would want to try to have my kid eat just as many different things as possible. And because kids don't really know anything else, they don't know not to like something unless you tell them not to like something. I don't know. I say that all the time to other people who are actually parents, and they're like, yeah, you say that now, but when your kid will only eat chicken nuggets, they're just gonna eat chicken nuggets.
Yeah, that's they try one thing, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
That they decide to like. I feel like it was a little ambitious. I know you disagree, as you just said, but I even as an adult, I was kind of skeptical about kimchi and things that are pickled in particular. I'm like, I don't know, me and vinegar. I don't know.
You're missing out on the probiotics, Ryan.
I know. I don't like kombucha. Not a fan. Yeah, things that are pickled, I'm like, I don't like the smell. I don't like mayo because it has vinegar in it. So kind of a trend that I've noticed in a lot of media for adults and for kids is kind of the exoticization, I don't know, where they make exotic locations feel exotic and it's so unique and weird and special to eat some salsa made by genuine Mexicans with some real spices. I thought this show did a really good job of kind of being all these foods are kind of normal and they all come from different places, but we can all eat them and enjoy being together eating the same food from different cultures.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've definitely seen different shows. For example, a worst case scenario would be something there was a episode of Man versus Food long ago where the guy was just eating something, I can't even remember what it was. Something really ridiculous, to showcase this culture. But then the people of the culture were we don't even eat that. You're just doing this to make things seem so exotic and different and weird. This very much did not do that. I think especially because they showed families cooking food together and maybe eating it for dinner or something like that. It just felt very normalizing the way that it showed different foods. And it wasn't they showed anything that unusual for a Western audience to see, except for maybe kimchi. I mean, I eat kimchi. I buy it at the store. But they would eat pasta or just more not unusual things.
Yeah, I have here the onigiri or even anything that they showed in Japan. I feel was kind of different, and they had a whole rice song about a bunch of different rice dishes from different countries. So I'm sure it was really exhilarating for some kids to be like, that's what we eat, and no one else at my school eats that, and it's on this show. I'm sure some kid out there has had that moment, and I'm sure it was very exciting for them.
Oh yeah, I bet. And they had kids, like they would have like kids kind of almost like interview style, it seemed like, from around the world, maybe like different schools, like, and they would be talking about different things that they ate, or like trying things and saying whether or not they liked them or what they thought about them. And I think it was all done in a very tasteful way.
It was very tasteful. I think they're gonna have to dub it because it's a kids show for US audiences, so I think that was kind of unavoidable. I would have liked for there to not be a dub, but I think it's perfectly fine for the age demographic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kids probably can't read subtitles. That would have made it nicer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one episode and food that they showcased in particular, I mentioned the pickles, and of course they talked about just regular old cucumber pickles, right? And at the very end, there was a pickle cake, and I was like watching it, and I mean the pickle cake like talked, and it said, "I'm a pickle," and my brain briefly had the unfortunate time of entering the space of Rick and Morty and thinking of, did they do that? Is that a Pickle Rick reference? But it didn't even like linger there too long for that to fully make the synapse connection. However, my cis white hetero boyfriend was like, I can't believe they just made that reference. Like, how many people do you think watch this show and get the reference? And I'm like, no, it's not a reference. It's just a coincidence. Savanah?
Yeah, no, my brain went there too when I saw that. I would assume it was a coincidence.
You don't think it's like someone on set is like, ooh, we're doing a pickle episode. You know what that means?
I mean, maybe. It is a possibility that somebody, like an Easter egg kind of a thing, was like, we're not going to tell anyone, but we're going to like slide this in. Maybe. I doubt it was like okayed by the whole team though, to be like, yep, we're going to reference that.
Mrs. O, if you can confirm, that would be appreciated.
Do you think she's seen Rick and Morty?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, like a lot of teens just go through that phase, and I'm sure Sasha and Malia were like, we're going to watch this cool kid show, and Michelle was wanting to know what it is. So I think it's possible.
We'll never know. Unless Michelle talks to us. So along with showing different cultures of food, it also touched on some different like social issues having to do with food specifically. Like they showed some different organizations that helped with food disparities. Like I forget what the organization was called, but there was one that was delivering like food and water to people after Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. There was also an organization that showed refugees in Italy, I believe. And I liked that they added those things, but I wish that they would have talked about it more like concretely and how like that might actually affect kids watching this show. Like, what if they talked to a kid who maybe said, yeah, like there was this time when we didn't really have a lot of food at home, or we don't live in a place where we can just like go to a farmer's market and get like fresh vegetables. Like all we have is a Walmart or fast food chains, and we live in a food desert. And I don't think that those things would have been like too high level to talk about on the show, because they did talk about some like pretty like important subjects like slavery, for instance, and I think that they like explain that in a way that would make sense for kids. So I think they could have talked about like a lack of access to food as well for children.
Yeah. I like agree and disagree. I think it would have been great if they'd added it and talked about it, but I'm not going to really count it against it for not adding it. I guess I do kind of mitigate that lack of addition for being partnered with the Partnership for Healthier Alliance. Yeah, so they're partnered with the PHA, we'll just abbreviate it now, to help give food to underprivileged families. So they do have an active campaign that's running right now, and I did get to play this little cute game when searching for Waffles and Mochi. You get to like make your own recipe or play little video games, and at the end they're being like, because you played this game, Walmart is donating, it's probably like 0.001 cent to PHA, but they do have that, and they do have like the donate button on their website. So I think that's their kind of answer for not addressing that. I don't know if it's appropriate, but
Yeah. I don't recall if they, like, mentioned that ever in the show. I don't know if I ever watched all the way through the credits, but I wonder if in the credits it, like, says donate to blah, blah, blah. Michelle Obama is, like, on the board. I think she might be, like, the head of that organization as well. And it's, like, a continuation of her campaign that she did in the White House. And, yeah, I read similarly about some of the work that they're doing right now. I know specifically they had the COVID-19 Fresh Food Fund to provide food to people who needed it during this pandemic as well.
Yeah, I'm really not begrudging it at all for not addressing that topic. I think I don't really think I've ever seen any food show that has addressed it. It's usually, if it's like a travel show, it's about learning about food, not lack of food.
I've seen some shows more recently that have, like, discussed, like, food deserts, I believe, on, now I can't remember what it's called, the Padma Lakshmi show on Hulu. I want to say that they briefly talked about, like, food disparities on reservations here in the United States and, like, switching to eating more, like, indigenous foods as being an answer to that. But I was really, really impressed that they, like, had a conversation about slavery in general. Like, I don't think I've ever seen that on a kid's show before. They had this man from this organization, and he was explaining, like, how his people came from enslaved people from Sierra Leone, and, like, to just hear somebody say, like, the words enslaved and, like, just be honest about what it was. Like, I've never, when they first started, like, at first it started, like, my people came from Sierra Leone, and I was like, okay, are they gonna, like, say why they came here? And then they did, and I was just very impressed by that.
Yeah, I was also very impressed by that. I have the direct quote here. A long time ago, people from Sierra Leone were brought to the United States of America to the South to grow rice by force. My great-great-grandmother was enslaved, which meant she was separated from her family and home and had to work by force for free. And why? Because she knew how to grow and process rice. And so many of my people grew rice during slavery and after slavery, and rice was a common part of our diet and our identity.
The show also does highlight, like I mentioned, like, refugees as well as people with disabilities too, and how they relate to food and different organizations that work with them as well, which I thought was cool.
Like they went to a deaf pizzeria, which was very, very cool. I really enjoyed everything that I saw on the show for the most part, and I feel like each episode kind of showcased a different aspect of different people and how they are all brought together by food, which is always the message. But yes. I mean, it's true. It's just because it's cheesy doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah. Agreed. So we have kind of mentioned how the show seems different. I was honestly trying to just remember, like, watching any other show about food as a kid, and I couldn't really remember apart from VeggieTales, which is not actually about food, it's about the Bible, just starring vegetables for some reason, and then maybe something like MasterChef Junior, where it's like a competition for kids, but I don't actually really have any memories unless it was maybe like one Sesame Street episode where they're talking about broccoli or something, not like an actual show about food. Can you think of any?
Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off? Does that count?
I guess.
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to think. There must have been like some cooking segments on like something like Out of the Box, or I mean even Sesame Street I'm sure had cooking segments on it, but nothing that I can really think of where like it's been directly targeted towards kids. Now I feel like kids are kind of on like the chef train and on like the food hacks train. I think it's something that they are proud of and happy to get on. I mean, I have kids tell me all the time that they make the best something. So I don't know. It must be more prolific now, like kind of liking food younger and getting into food and making it.
Yeah, I do remember when I was young, probably about like 9 years old, I had a Rachel Ray cookbook for kids, and I would make recipes out of it. I think, though, that a lot of kids have definitely gotten into cooking, especially probably in the last year with the pandemic of having to be at home and needing to do something. Well, they were there, but even prior to that, I think like with things like Great British Bake Off, that has been really popular amongst kids I know, and just becoming more part of their like zeitgeist, which I think says a lot about how like our relationship and like just understanding and literacy around nutrition has evolved. I think today it's very much different climate than like when we were kids and the conversations that were had around food then. And part of that I think could be like in part due to like things like Michelle Obama's campaign. I don't know how like successful her Let's Move campaign was while she was in the White House. Their whole goal was to try to reduce childhood obesity and promoting healthy habits. But
yeah, I was reading a whole thing about that.
Yeah.
And I read Barack's memoir. Sorry, Michelle. I would like to say yours is next, but you're going to have a documentary, so I'll probably just watch that.
I thought it already came out.
I thought it already came out. Yeah, it does. I'll watch that. Mrs. O, I'm so sorry. Please, if you'd like to be on PPP, let us know. Shoot us a message. Email below.
Slide into our DMs.
So I know that her campaign was really diminished by Republicans at the time. A lot of them were making fun of her, and some of the schools didn't like it either because of the healthier options that were just harder to keep in cafeterias, not just like frozen whatever, french fries, tater tots, what have you, but actually having like fruits and vegetables that you have to maintain. Did come with some pushback there.
Yeah, well, and a lot of that too I think has to do with organizations like the USDA, which don't even get me started on the USDA because I will go off. But I will just say, like, a large thing with that is so many people who are like on the board for the USDA also are like the heads of companies like Tyson Chicken and stuff like that, and they're the ones who get to determine who like what healthy is for kids to eat in school, which is if you've ever seen what kids eat at a public school, it's not great what they're given. And so I think a lot of it is just their own corporate interest as well.
Yeah. I do want to talk about two things I think that are kind of just on the top of my head right now. I want to know, what was your favorite food as a child, Savanah?
Like what age are you thinking?
Just like if you had to think back from probably like 0 to 10, like just like if you're like really a child, like not really even thinking about that preteen kind of era yet, what would have been your favorite food?
Probably beans and rice. Like our Nana used to make us beans and rice all the time. That was probably my favorite. What about you?
Probably maybe also beans and rice. Maybe sopita. Yeah. So sopita, everyone, hello. It's a made-up food. I'm pretty sure that's...
the word is made up for us.
Yes, but I think it's based off of...
Fideo.
Fideo, yeah. Which is kind of a common Mexican soup. I mean, they have it as a special at Cafe Rio, which is a Mexican chain.
Really?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a made-up dish of... It's like tomato soup, but with, like, cheese and noodles.
And some people put, like, chicken in it. But also, like, it's kind of like a meme food amongst, like, Mexican people. Like, I see all the things all the time where it's like, you know, your family didn't have money if you were eating this every day. So there's that too.
Yeah. We ate it a lot, and it's still very nostalgic. And whenever my mom makes it, I can smell it, and that's what I'm gonna have.
And her mom makes the best too.
Mm-hmm. It is the best. I remember that, like, I felt very just like, yes, give me props from coming from a poor Mexican family when I was in my religions class, and we were telling like personal stories about like cooking, because we were reading something that just involved like cooking and being around like family storytelling. And I was like, yeah, like my family was always comes together with our pot of beans on Sunday. My mom would always have that on the stove for us. And I just felt very just like, yep, that's me, just your poor Mexican little girl in your college class. Authentic.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I feel like I've had several art pieces that also revolve around beans. It's very much a identity staple. I guess I'd also just like for us to talk a little bit more about our experience with food. Like, what do we remember learning about food when we were kids, whether that be from our parents or from school? Like, do you have any like distinct memories, Ryan?
I feel like all I can remember is me not trusting my father when he cooked for us, because he would say he was a chef, and my dad kind of like lied to us a lot, so I never knew when he was telling the truth or not. So it really took me a very long time to understand that he was actually a pretty good cook. You could even call him a chef.
I think he is a chef.
Yeah.
Not just you could call him one.
So see, it's still there in my brain. So I feel like anything that was ever told to me about food, I'd be like, are you lying to me? I'm not going to even listen to you, because I don't even want to know if it's a lie or a truth. Like, I don't even want to think about it. So I guess that's kind of weird, but...
Yeah, I remember my dad was like really into nutrition when I was young, and still is. I would say he's very much into nutrition, but he used to show me like this book that he would pull out with like the food pyramid in it or something, and I remember learning about the food pyramid and things like that, when I was in school, and I think particularly probably around like 2003, 2004 was when I started hearing more and more things in school about like childhood obesity or the like obesity epidemic in the United States. And we'd do things like jump rope for heart and like, I don't know, just like different activities where it seemed like that was always like the underlying message. And I remember just seeing a lot of messaging on TV too about this in subtle ways, like what was it called, like Let's Get Out and Play on Nickelodeon, like things like that. But I feel like I never saw anybody talking about enjoying food or liking food. Like like in my formative mind, I just remember people talking about eating less food so we wouldn't become obese.
I don't know about eating less food. I feel like it was just being healthy, eating veggies and drinking your 3 gallons of milk a day, or else your bones will disintegrate.
I don't know. I feel like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's kind of warped too, because now I know that like the food pyramid is garbage. So it just seems like even more of a lie. But I feel like I heard more messaging about eating less food versus eating healthy food.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably true. I'm not sure, though. I mean, I've had a body complex from a very young age. Like, it's weird because I can think about the first time in my memory where I remembered feeling fat. And it was when I was wearing this Easter dress with flowers on it. And, like, I went through life, like, knowing that was the first time I ever felt fat. And I was like, I wonder how young I was then. And I saw a picture of myself in that dress, like, at Easter. And it's that one iconic picture of me where I'm crying at Easter in Colorado, and I'm like 4 years old. And I was thinking I was fat at 4 years old. So probably we were all told to eat less because we were all fat. Probably.
Yeah, I feel like I've very much had things like that ingrained in me very, very young. I feel like diet culture was like much different then than it is now. Like everybody was talking about diet culture in like every aspect of life, it seemed like back then. And it was just always talking about losing weight. And
yeah, I mean, my mom would just have Dr. Oz on like in the evening times, and I mean, I would listen to Dr. Oz, and I would hear what he says, and I would want to buy all those dietary green tea extract products that he was offering to help shed pounds fast.
Yeah. And I think, like, I remember just, like, so distinctly, I guess, just it being normalized to just, like, what is the word I'm thinking of? Like, to, like, not allow yourself to have things. Like, I remember being at, like, parties with like my like girlfriends in high school where we'd get pizza and everybody would only eat 1 piece of pizza because we were so afraid of anybody thinking that we would eat 2 pieces of pizza. Like, God forbid you eat 2 pieces of pizza. But like everybody was like putting on the show like, oh yes, I only eat 1 little piece of pizza and I'm very full. Like that's not true, but everybody felt like they like had to present that.
Yeah, that just brought back a lot of memories of people just eating 1 piece of pizza. A lot of memories, yeah.
Yeah, and I know for me, like, that definitely has warped my feelings around food and my body image, and it's something that I feel like I'm still, like, actively working on, like, trying to, like, reprogram my brain in the way that I, like, think about those things.
And Waffles and Mochi didn't really focus on your body at all. In fact, they had plenty of, I guess, fat people on the show as well talking about food, which is always pleasant to see. I really like to see body diversity on shows, especially when they're talking about food and cooking. It's always very discouraging to see such fit people talking about food.
Yeah, and I liked that it wasn't like they were putting all this pressure on them to be healthy. Is like no one was like, okay, well, we also need to talk about exercise. Like, they did talk about moderation, but they didn't just talk about moderation in terms of food. Like, they also showed like watering a plant. Like, you have to have moderation when you're watering the plant. Like, it didn't feel so like stressful, I guess, which I really appreciated. Because I know when I was younger, like, I did feel an anxiety about that. Like, I would always feel like, if I'm going to eat this piece of cheese, like, my arteries are going to clog up. Like, I just know it. And I'd like that it didn't, like, have any messaging like that.
I would always try to eat my Halloween candy in, like, 1 day. So I didn't have to... I thought it would be better that way. To just eat it all in 1 day and then throw it away. I'm normal. Other people have to have experiences like that.
No, I think they definitely do. I mean, there's a whole world of problems and people who have experienced, like, any form of eating disorder or body image. All right, so kind of moving on from that, I want to talk a little bit more about like why we have shifted our views of food over time, just because I think it's pretty interesting. This episode has been really exciting for me, Ryan, because I kind of feel like if I were to like go back for my PhD, I might want to get it in food studies. So this has been very exciting for me to learn about and research for this episode. So just like really quick, like rapid fire history about our changing attitudes towards food. Right after World War II, like food scarcity was still like a pretty big issue here in the United States and in Europe, and most people broadly just saw food as being just purely sustenance. Like you weren't even allowed to put stale bread out for birds in like London because it was like illegal because there's like little bread. And then after that, into the 1960s, like food started to become more popularized and reinvented. Specifically, French food started to become really popular amongst like the elite, like Jackie O in the United States. She brought in, I believe, a French chef like to be at the White House, and that started to make rich people be more into food at that time, and that kind of continued through the 1970s. The term foodie was first used in print in 1980 in the New Yorker, and that was when like foodie culture, if you could say, like really started to kind of take off. In 1993, the Food Network first came on the scene, as well as Bon Appetit, the magazine, which started to show more food on TV and stuff like that. It was becoming more and more popular in people's daily lives. After 9/11, people started to go more towards wanting to eat comfort foods and like wanting to have more accessible food personalities on TV, like people like Rachel Ray, who, and then by extension after that, I think talking kind of more about like maybe healthy living or typical things you would eat at home versus like high fine dining French cuisine. And then going from there, I think that in the like early 2000s and like 2010s more specifically, there's been a pretty major shift in food and the way that we interact with food. If you're thinking about like in the early 2000s, people really thinking about diet culture, obesity, and then from there also eating disorders and anorexia, which I feel like what people talked a lot about then, all of a sudden switching to like more foodie culture as we know it today, with food being a form of clout, like Instagram really taking off, people being able to show off the food that they have. And I will read you a couple quotes that I found from an article about Anthony Bourdain. It won't be surprising if cultural historians look back on the first 2 decades of the century as the era of crazed oral gratification. I'm speaking of the fetishization of food, of cooking and eating, of watching other people cooking and eating, that has become omnipresent across all platforms, all media, all screens, and all palates in our great nation. So I think all of that is pretty obvious, like with the way that we have kind of come to like a maximal state of food, I think. What do you think about that, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly trying to find like the next cool thing to put on my taste buds. Yeah. Like the next new experience. Like I know the like bubble bars are really in right now, and I haven't had a bubble bar yet, and I really want a bubble bar. Or like I saw on TikTok the other day these little like packet salads where it's like in edible like packets and salads. I just like want the next like new experience. It's like the future of food, and I just want it now.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people feel the same way. I know I have definitely felt the same way too. Like most of my Instagram feed, I feel like is restaurants that I've never been to, but I'm just like waiting to go to one day to like experience all these different things. And I definitely like try to hop on as many food trends when I was living in New York as well, just to like go to all the things there. Now, like I think like the next iteration or the current iteration that we are in with food is also kind of discussed in this same article with Anthony Bourdain, where he's kind of saying how today it seems like we're going back to the food of the past in a sense. Specifically, I think like in the wellness culture or vegan culture or just different health food cultures, people are into eating things like ancient grains and foods of like health foods that are like fermented from Asian cultures or different things like that people have been doing obviously for a really long time, or just are like attitudes towards like the ritual of eating food, having it being a celebration, or even like food being medicine, and how that can like help heal you of different ailments. And that's something that people have always talked about, but here in the United States, that's like becoming almost like the new and trendy thing.
On the other side of the coin, there's like also GMOs to think about, which food shows I feel like never reference. And I know they have their positives and negatives, but I overall think that GMOs have positively impacted food availability. Like I know there's the whole thing where if like one banana gets wiped out, all the bananas are gone, but at least we have giant bananas.
Yeah, and then there's also like the environmental impacts of GMOs and how they can be disruptive to the environment around them. And even while we have GMOs that could in theory make food more widely available, it still isn't widely available. So it's a multi-layered issue for sure. And also with like talking about foods being like food is medicine or something like that, like people are also starting to do that in a way that's kind of like cultural appropriation-y, or like not recognizing like the actual history of food. They're just like, wow, I discovered fermented soybeans, and it's like, you didn't discover it. Like other people have. And there's, I think, kind of a battle going on between like the colonizing of food right now and also like the decolonizing of food.
Before we kind of move on to our final like thoughts and wrap up a bit, I did want to talk about the show and how Michelle's interests kind of formed around nutrition. I read Mr. Obama's book, and not to talk about Michelle through his book, because I know she has her own book, and I'm sure there's more detail there, but I'm going to do that. It states that Michelle became interested in child nutrition when one of her daughters, I'm not quite sure which one, was overweight for her percentile, or for her age group. And that kind of made me a little bit weird and like skeevy about why her interest developed, because there's always that fine line of telling people we need to be healthy because eating healthy is good, and also being fat phobic.
Yeah, I think it's a very complicated issue, because like right now I've been seeing a lot about how just because you're overweight doesn't mean you're unhealthy. And I personally don't really know like the science behind like what that is or what metrics people use to determine what healthy is. But I could see like as a parent, like you probably want your kid to be as healthy as they possibly can be, but also like you don't want them to then develop like negative connotations about how they look or what their state of their health is, because also like some people are unhealthy and they don't have a choice in that, and but it's still okay. Like that doesn't make them a bad person because they're having problems with their health as well. So I think it's a very complicated issue that I don't personally know the answer to, and it's something I've been trying to just have a better understanding of lately.
Yeah, it's not something that Waffles and Mochi addresses either, but that's okay. Yeah. I think kids should just worry about health and not weight.
I did just like get a flashback in my mind of the Arthur episode when he learns that he's husky. Did you ever see that?
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
There's like an episode where like Arthur has to get like new pants for school, and he's like, none of these pants fit me, and I have to go to the husky section. And then he's like, I guess it's okay that I wear husky pants or something. It just is like, why did they make that episode? It's just really weird. Anyways, other messaging about weight to children. Jumping off of that, just some like quick final opinions really I would like to share on Higher Ground Productions, and maybe your thoughts about why the Obamas have decided to launch this new venture. Is it just to make more money? Is it because they have an agenda they want to push? Like, what do we think?
Yes, they have an agenda, and it is health. Oh no. I'm sure a lot of people, I'm positive a lot of people don't really like that the Obamas are getting into the entertainment industry. They probably see it as a form of propaganda and as a form of brainwashing. I don't really think that Waffles and Mochi, now that I'm thinking about it, really employ a ton of like left-wing thoughts. They do talk about slavery and refugees, so I'm sure that they're mad about that. They, as in Republicans, I don't know, right-wing people, or just people that don't like the Obamas in general. I feel like it's a pretty neutral show in all things. I'm sure just people just hate seeing Michelle on screen.
Probably, unfortunately. Yeah, I agree. I think that this show was not really leaning in any particular way. I think it's like kind of interesting how the Obamas are kind of doing like the reverse of what some other politicians have done, like Reagan or President 45, where they were entertainers of some sort or actors and then became politicians, and the Obamas are kind of doing the other way around. But I get the sense that they're doing it more so like as a form of like activism for them, like they can talk about subjects that they're passionate about versus like wanting to be famous.
Yeah, and they're both very well educated people. I really do trust what they think, and I trust the research that they put into what they say, and I feel like they're very careful about what they project, and they don't want to cause harm. Though I'm very proud of the media that they put out, and I'm happy to support it.
Yeah, and I look forward to see where it goes from here. Like, I'm very intrigued to see if this is going to be like a short little thing that they're doing some projects, or if it's going to be really long lasting and be something that has like a legacy of a production company. We will see. I did really enjoy Crip Camp. I highly recommend that documentary that they made.
Didn't see it yet. Probably will. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I will watch, like I said, Becoming eventually.
Well, thank you everybody for hanging out with us today. Please leave us a comment. Tell us what you think about food. What's your favorite food? Leave us a comment. And
your childhood food.
Yes.
Food.
What is your favorite childhood food?
Yes.
And yeah, leave us a rating. Check us out on Patreon if you feel so inclined. And make sure you come hang out with us next week.
Bye. I'm not even recording anything.
Is that an omen?